My wedding at the elegant glass conservatory was supposed to be perfect. 15 minutes before walking down the aisle, my bridal shoes vanished. My sister stood there, phone raised, that familiar sneer twisting her lips. Try walking barefoot. She laughed, already live streaming my humiliation. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. Instead, I reached for the second box I'd hidden months ago, and the counterattack I'd been planning for years finally rolled into motion. They thought they knew me. They thought I'd stay silent. As always, they were wrong. My name is Tessa Morgan, and I learned long ago that family can be your deepest wound. At 34, I've built a career as operations manager at Ravenwood Community Housing, a nonprofit that actually changes lives. It's work that requires patience, strategy, and the ability to see 3 moves ahead skills I first developed surviving my own family. The Redfield Conservatory stretched before me like a crystal palace, its Victorian glass panels catching the October light. Denver's skyline glimmered in the distance, but here in Boulder's outskirts, we were cocooned in green. Orchids climbed the support beams. The air smelled of jasmine and fresh mulch. Daniel had proposed here exactly 1 year ago, between the butterfly garden and the tropical ferns. Now it would host our wedding, or what my family assumed would be another opportunity to humiliate me. Daniel Reyes understood boundaries. That's what I loved most about him. The structural engineer who could calculate load-bearing limits for skyscrapers also recognized the weight families could place on a person's soul. "Whatever happens today," he'd said this morning at 6:15, pressing coffee into my hands. "We handle it together, but it's your call." My mother, Elaine Barrett, had arrived at 9 sharp, her practiced smile gleaming like fresh lacquer. "Darling, the venue is quaint." She'd run her manicured finger along a wooden bench, checking for dust that didn't exist. Though I suppose nonprofit work doesn't allow for the 4 seasons. Behind her, my younger sister Sloane had already started filming. 29 years old, and she still treated cruelty like content. Her marketing studio, Glowwick, survived on dramatic social media posts and money our parents funneled from accounts they thought I didn't know about. Including funds from my college account money our grandparents had specifically earmarked for my education, quietly redirected when Sloane's business ventures failed. Again, just family being family, my father Victor would say, avoiding eye contact whenever another loan disappeared into Sloane's void. The pattern started in middle school, my dress for the 8th grade dance, carefully saved for with babysitting money, slashed with scissors the morning of the event. "It was just a prank," Mom had said, buying Sloane ice cream while I stayed home, the internship at Morrison Communications I'd earned in college, lost after Sloane called my supervisor pretending to be me, declining the position with invented vulgarities. "She didn't mean any harm," Mom insisted, even as I scrambled to salvage my reputation. The wine, accidentally, spilled on my bridesmaid dress at our cousin's wedding, Sloane's phone conveniently recording my stained humiliation. Each incident followed the same script: Sloane's cruelty, Mom's enablement, Dad's silence, and my expected forgiveness. But I'm not that girl anymore. The divorce papers in Mom and Dad's past, or whatever financial catastrophe they'd hidden, had created the perfect storm. Mom needed to maintain appearances. Dad needed to avoid conflict. Sloane needed a target for her inadequacy. And I'd been cast as the family shock absorber, the one who'd take the hit and stay silent. 3 months ago, when I sent the wedding invitations, Daniel had asked, "Are you sure? One last chance." I'd replied, "They can choose to be decent, or they can face consequences." I'd started preparing then. Every vendor had backup plans. The photographer used local servers, not cloud storage that could be hacked or deleted. The officiant was an old friend from law school, not someone who could be manipulated by tearful family members. My dress hung in 3 different locations. The shoes, my grandmother's vintage heels, restored with new silver clasps, had duplicates. Even the marriage license had been filed in advance, preventing any last-minute bureaucratic sabotage. My friend Mara, A paralegal at Peterson and Associates who handled pro bono work for Ravenwood had reviewed every contract. "You're planning for war," she'd said, scanning the vendor agreements. "I'm planning for pattern recognition," I'd corrected. The conservatory's main hall could hold 200 guests, but we'd invited 90. Enough witnesses for what I knew was coming, not so many that collateral damage would spread too wide. The ghost orchids Daniel had specially ordered because he knew grandmother had loved them hung from invisible wire, creating clouds of white above the ceremony space. I stood in the preparation room, watching through the old leaded glass as guests arrived. My colleagues from Ravenwood, who'd seen me negotiate with hostile landlords and navigate city bureaucracy. Daniel's family, warm and functional in ways that still surprised me. Friends who'd witnessed years of Sloane's behavior, their patience with my family's dysfunction finally wearing thin. The wedding was scheduled for 2:30. By noon, Sloane had already posted 3 videos mocking the venue, my dress choice, and the suburban mediocrity of it all. Mom had rearranged the ceremony flowers twice, ensuring the photographer captured her fixing things. Dad had disappeared to the parking lot, probably sitting in his car playing solitaire on his phone, his favorite avoidance technique. But I'd learned something valuable at Ravenwood. The best response to chaos isn't more chaos. It's infrastructure, systems, documentation. The shoes sat in their box, wrapped in tissue paper my grandmother had saved from her own wedding in 1953. Next to them, the backup pair waited in a locked drawer. Let them think I was the same scared girl who'd cried over a ruined dress, who'd believed promises of change, who'd accepted "that's just how she is" as an excuse for cruelty. They were about to learn that patience isn't the same as weakness, and that every joke, every humiliation, every stolen moment I'd been keeping receipts. The antique clock in the hall chimed noon. 2.5 hours until showtime. I was ready. 2 o'clock. 30 minutes until ceremony. The preparation room hummed with controlled energy. My bridesmaids, genuine friends, not family obligations, adjusted their sage green dresses while the makeup artist added final touches. Through the door, I could hear the string quartet warming up, Bach floating through the conservatory's glass corridors. "Just need to grab my shoes," I said, moving toward the antique armoire where I'd placed them this morning at 11:45. My fingers found a tissue paper, an empty box. The grandmother's shoes were gone. My heartbeat stayed steady. I'd expected this, actually. Had been expecting it since I'd deliberately mentioned, within Sloane's hearing yesterday, exactly where I'd be keeping them. The bait had been taken. Heels clicked on marble. That particular staccato that announced Sloane before her voice did. She appeared in the doorway, phone already recording, her burgundy dress chosen specifically to photograph better than sage green. Oh no. Her voice dripped false concern. "Missing something." The camera swung to my stockinged feet, then up to my face. "Guess you'll have to walk barefoot. Very bohemian. Your followers will love this authentic moment." Behind her, Mom materialized like a summoned demon, her mother of the bride outfit coordinated with Sloane's dress rather than my wedding colors. "Tessa, dear, don't make a scene. The guests are already seated. Sometimes we just have to adapt." Adapt. I repeated the word, tasting its familiar bitterness. Code for accept the humiliation. Don't fight back. Preserve the family image. I noticed the powder on Sloane's palm, the same talcum I'd dusted inside the shoebox this morning. Her dress pocket bulged with something rectangular, a folded paper. "Sloane," I said quietly. "Show me your hands." She laughed, that practiced influencer laugh. "What are you? CSI, God. You're so dramatic. It's just shoes." But she'd made a mistake. She always made mistakes when she thought she'd already won. The phone shifted angle, and in its reflection, I caught sight of the note she'd hidden my handwriting visible for a split second. The note I'd left with the shoes, knowing she'd take it as a trophy. "Security footage," I said, pulling out my own phone. The conservatory has cameras in the hallways, installed last month after someone vandalized the orchid collection. Sloane's smile flickered. Mom stepped forward. You wouldn't dare check footage on your wedding day. Think of the time, the guests. 2 minutes, I said, already texting Marcus, the venue's security manager who I'd briefed yesterday. He's pulling it up now. This is ridiculous, Mom hissed, but her voice had lost its authority. Just wear your backup shoes and stop causing drama. Backup shoes. She knew. Of course she knew. They'd planned this together, mother and daughter, like they'd planned every humiliation. But knowing I had backups had been part of their calculation. They wanted me to surrender, to choose compliance over confrontation. Marcus appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. A quiet man with 30 years in security. He had daughters of his own. He'd understood immediately when I'd explained the situation yesterday. Ma'am, he said to me, ignoring the others. Footage from 1:47 p.m. He turned the screen. There was Sloane, clear as daylight, entering my prep room, removing the shoebox. And this was the gift I hadn't expected Mom standing watch in the hallway. Delete that, Mom commanded. Can't do that, ma'am, Marcus replied calmly. Potential theft on premises. I've already backed it up per protocol and notified the venue director. Sloane's live stream was still running. Her followers were commenting in real time, but she'd miscalculated her audience. The comments weren't laughing. They were asking why she was in the bride's room. Why she was filming instead of helping. Why her mother was involved. Where are they? I asked, voice steady as stone. It's just a prank, Sloane said, but her voice cracked. Don't be so. Where are my grandmother's shoes? The room went silent. Even the quartet seemed to pause between movements. Dad appeared in the doorway, face flushed. He'd been watching the live stream from the parking lot. For once, he couldn't avoid the conflict playing out in real time for hundreds of viewers. Sloane, he said quietly. Enough. They're in Mom's car, Sloane admitted, deflating. Blue Lexus, trunk, under the emergency kit. I looked at Marcus. He nodded and left. You filmed it, I said to Sloane. You filmed yourself telling me to walk barefoot at my wedding. You filmed Mom helping you, and you broadcast it live. The comment stream on her phone was turning. Her followers, those precious metrics she lived for, were leaving, unfollowing. The numbers dropped as we watched. I need everyone except my bridesmaids to leave this room, I said. Now! Mom started to protest, but Dad, who never intervened, took her arm. Elaine, we're done here. As they left, Sloane tried one last manipulation. Tessa, I'm sorry. You're not invited to the reception, I said. Security will escort you out after the ceremony. And Sloane, check your email tonight. She blanched. The cease and desist letter Mara had prepared was scheduled to send at 5 p.m., along with documentation of every incident, every post, every filmed humiliation, including today's. 2:25. Marcus returned with the shoes, still in their box. Grandmother's tissue paper crumpled but salvageable. The conservatory director, Mrs. Rodriguez, followed him. Miss Morgan, she said carefully. Given the circumstances, we support whatever decision you make regarding your guest list. I slipped on my grandmother's shoes. They fit perfectly, as they always had. The ceremony proceeds as planned, I said, but we'll need security at the reception entrance. There's a list of names. She nodded, understanding immediately. My bridesmaids surrounded me, creating a protective circle as we prepared to walk to the ceremony space. Through the glass walls, I could see the guests, Daniel at the altar, the afternoon sun turning everything golden. You good, Mara whispered. I thought about the backup plans still in place, the documentation ready to file, the witnesses who'd seen everything. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. The walk to the altar gave me 90 seconds to catalog 20 years of manipulation. It started with reframing. When Sloane cut my dress at 14, Mom didn't see scissors destroying fabric, she saw sisterly hijinks. When I lost the Morrison internship, it wasn't sabotage, it was Tessa being too sensitive about a misunderstanding. Every cruelty got repackaged, every boundary violation renamed, until I genuinely questioned my own perception of reality. That's what gaslighting does. It makes you complicit in your own diminishment. Daniel's eyes found mine as I approached, reading the steel beneath my calm. He'd seen the security footage notification on his phone. His family good people who said what they meant and meant what they said watched with genuine joy. They didn't know about the drama backstage. They just saw a bride in vintage shoes, walking toward love. But my family knew. Dad stood rigid in the front row, actually present for once instead of mentally calculating escape routes. Mom's smile looked spray-painted on, her knuckles white around her clutch, and Sloan was filming again, unable to resist content even now, not understanding she was documenting her own unraveling. The ceremony itself blurred past, vows exchanged, rings placed, promises made. But my mind was mapping the deeper patterns, the ones I'd spent 3 years in therapy identifying and another 2 documenting. The financial manipulation ran deepest. My college fund, $47,000 from my grandparents, earmarked specifically for my education, hadn't disappeared all at once. It had been drained in increments, transferred to family emergency accounts that somehow always ended up funding Glowwick's latest disaster. The photography equipment Sloan claimed was stolen, the website redesign after bad reviews, the legal fees when she'd used photos without permission. I'd found the records 6 months ago, bank statements Dad thought he'd shredded, rescued from his office recycling, email threads between Mom and Sloan, planning the transfers, discussing how to keep me from noticing. Tessa won't check until graduation, Mom had written. By then, we'll have replaced it. They never did. Instead, I'd taken out loans, worked 3 jobs through college, graduated with debt that took 8 years to pay off. Meanwhile, Sloan posted about entrepreneurship and girl boss energy, funded by money meant for my education. But the financial theft was just one thread in the web. The psychological warfare was more intricate. There was the concern phase. We're worried about you. Tessa, you seem so angry lately. Have you considered therapy? Yes, where I learned about narcissistic family systems. The triangulation. Mom telling Sloan that I'd said things about her I'd never said. Then comforting Sloan through the manufactured hurt while painting me as cruel. The boundary testing. Showing up unannounced at my apartment. Going through my things during visits. Reading my journal and then dropping hints about its contents at family dinners. The reputation management Mom's careful social media curation that showcased Sloan's success while I existed only as background decoration. The responsible older sister who helps with the family. And underneath it all, the enrollment making me complicit. Don't tell your father about the money. You know how Sloan is, just avoid conflict. Family protects family. Each secret I kept made me more entangled, more responsible for maintaining their false reality. You may kiss the bride, the officiant said, pulling me back to the present. Daniel's kiss was warm, grounding, real. The guests applauded, and for a moment, I let myself feel the joy of it. This was my chosen family now. The people who clapped weren't performing. They were celebrating. As we turned to walk back down the aisle, I saw Mara near the back, phone in hand. She nodded once. The legal documents were ready. The evidence compiled. 3 years of preparation for what would happen at the reception. During the cocktail hour, while guests mingled in the botanical garden section, I watched my family perform damage control. Mom worked the room, her version of events already crystallizing. Technical difficulties with the shoes. Can you believe it? But Tessa handled it beautifully. Sloan had switched from filming to scrolling, watching her follower count hemorrhage in real time. The live stream incident had been screen recorded by multiple viewers, already spreading beyond her control. Dad found me by the orchid display. The first time we'd been alone in months. The money. he said quietly. I knew about some of it. $47,000, I replied. You knew about all of it. He looked older suddenly, the weight of complicity finally visible. Your mother said it was temporary, that Sloane's business would succeed and pay it back. And you believed that I wanted to. He stared at the ghost orchids. It was easier than fighting, than divorce, than admitting what we'd become. What you'd become, I corrected. I didn't become anything. I just survived you. He flinched. Good. After tonight, I continued, our relationship will be exactly what you make it. You can keep enabling them, or you can start making amends. The choice is yours. But I'm done being the family shock absorber. The reception, he said slowly. What are you planning? I thought about the USB drive in Mara's pocket, loaded with evidence. The cease and desist letters, the demand for repayment, the security footage from today, the paper trail going back years. Justice, I said, the kind that comes with receipts. The cocktail hour was ending. Guests began moving toward the reception hall, its glass ceiling revealing the October sky. The space had been transformed with white orchids and silver accents, grandmother's favorite colors. The head table sat elevated on a small platform, visible to everyone. Mom approached as we prepared to enter, her public smile replaced with private fury. Whatever you're thinking, she hissed. Don't. Not here. Not with everyone watching. That's exactly why here, I replied. And everyone watching is the point. You'll destroy the family. No, I said, adjusting grandmother's shoes one last time. You destroyed the family. I'm just done pretending otherwise. The doors opened. The reception awaited. In my pocket. My phone buzzed with a message from Mara. All systems go. Time for the final act. The Redfield Conservatory's contract sat in my bridal suite, annotated with Mara's precise handwriting. 3 weeks ago, when we'd reviewed it together, she'd found the clause that would become our foundation. The venue maintains zero tolerance for harassment, unauthorized recording, or distribution of private event content. Violation permits immediate removal and potential civil action. It's airtight, Mara had said, highlighting Section 7.4. Colorado's privacy laws are strict about commercial use of someone's image without consent. Add the intentional infliction of emotional distress angle, and you've got both civil and criminal possibilities. Now, as guests settled into the reception hall, every piece of our legal framework was in place. The venue's screens, 3 large displays meant for slideshow memories, ran on a closed system with a single control point. I'd paid extra for the security package, which meant only designated devices could access the system. The official photographer and videographer used encrypted local storage, backing up to physical drives every 30 minutes. No cloud uploads that could be deleted or disputed later. Marcus, the security manager, had positioned himself near the main screen controls. 2 other security personnel stood at the exit standard for a wedding of this size, but they'd been briefed on potential disruptions. Mrs. Rodriguez, the venue director, had her own copy of today's incident report, time-stamped at 2:47 p.m., documenting the theft and recovery of personal property. The beautiful thing about contracts, Mara had explained while drafting our documents, is that they're preventive. You don't need to wait for damages to enforce them. The cease and desist letter, already drafted and notarized, sat in Mara's briefcase. It wasn't just about today's incident. 3 months of documentation supported its screenshots of Sloane's posts using my image for her business promotion without permission. Recorded phone calls where she discussed leveraging family content for engagement, and 63 instances of defamatory statements across her social platforms. The conversion claim legal speak for theft was simpler. Grandmother's shoes weren't just footwear, they were irreplaceable family heirlooms with documented provenance. The insurance appraisal I'd gotten last month valued them at $12,000, making the theft a felony in Colorado. Not that I'd press criminal charges. The threat was enough, but the masterpiece was the financial documentation. Every transfer from my education fund had a paper trail. Mom and Dad had used their joint account, making both legally liable. The transfers to Glowick created a clear pattern of fraud. Colorado's statute of limitations for fraud was 3 years, but for breach of fiduciary duty, it extended to 5. We were well within both windows. Your parents had a fiduciary duty, Mara had explained. That money was designated for your education. Using it otherwise isn't just theft, it's breach of trust with enhanced penalties. During the salad course, I watched Sloane check her phone obsessively. Her follower count had dropped by 30% since the live stream. Comments flooded in. Did you seriously steal your sister's shoes? This is gross. Unfollowing. Her engagement rate, the metric she lived by, was tanking in real time. Mom maintained her facade, but I saw her texting furiously under the table, probably trying to do damage control with her book club, her charity board, all the social circles where reputation mattered more than truth. She didn't know that 3 of her charity board members were at the wedding, had seen the security footage, and were already questioning her position as fundraising chair. The DJ, briefed beforehand, announced the traditional slideshow would begin after dinner. The bride and groom have prepared something special, he said, winking at me. I'd given him a script and strict instructions once started. The presentation ran for exactly 12 minutes. No interruptions. The screens would lock after beginning, requiring a manual override that would take at least 5 minutes to execute. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. You sure about this? They chose this, I reminded him. Every step, they chose cruelty. I'm just choosing consequences. At 8:45 p.m., Mara stood and walked to the control station. She inserted the USB drive, entered the access code, and nodded to the DJ. Before we celebrate the union of Tessa and Daniel, the DJ announced, the bride would like to share some thoughts on family, truth, and new beginnings. The screens flickered to life. The first slide was beautiful, a photo of grandmother in her wedding shoes, dated 1953. Her smile radiated joy, untainted by what her daughter and granddaughter would become. The shoes sat beside her, gleaming and perfect, not yet burdened with the weight they'd carry today. The second slide showed the insurance appraisal, the shoes' value clearly displayed. These shoes, my recorded voice narrated, were hidden today at 2 o'clock, 30 minutes before my wedding ceremony. The security footage began playing. Crystal clear, Sloane entering my room, removing the box, Mom standing guard, their faces unmistakable, their intent undeniable. Gasps rippled through the reception hall. Someone dropped a wine glass. The sound of shattering crystal punctuated Sloane's filmed voice. Try walking barefoot. Mom stood, her chair scraping against the floor. Turn this off. Marcus stepped forward. Ma'am, please remain seated. The presentation continued. Financial records, bank statements, email threads, each piece of evidence building on the last, creating an undeniable narrative of theft, fraud, and systematic abuse. The venue has a zero-tolerance policy. My voice continued as the contracts appeared on screen. Harassment and unauthorized recording of private events are grounds for immediate removal. Sloane's phone buzzed. The scheduled cease and desist had arrived, followed immediately by the demand for repayment of $47,000 plus interest. Her face went white as she read. The final slide was simple text. Today, I choose accountability over silence. Today, I choose truth over family secrets. Today, I begin my marriage free from manipulation, gaslighting, and financial abuse. Those who've wronged me have 30 days to make amends. The documentation has been filed. The choice is now theirs. The screens went dark. The reception hall sat in absolute silence. Then, from the back, someone started clapping. One of Mom's charity board members. Then another. Then Daniel's family. Then my colleagues from Ravenwood. The applause built until it filled the glass-ceilinged space, echoing off the windows like rain. Mom grabbed her purse, her face mottled with rage and humiliation. But as she turned to leave, Mrs. Rodriguez stood in her path. "Ma'am," the venue director said calmly, "we'll need you to sign the incident report before you leave, for our insurance records." Every exit had a security guard. Every screen had recorded the presentation. Every guest had witnessed the truth. The trap hadn't just been set. It had been built into the architecture of the day itself, woven into contracts and contingencies, backed by law and witnessed by society. "You planned this," Dad said, not quite a question. "For 3 years," I confirmed. "Every document, every backup, every legal angle. The only thing I didn't plan was them actually stealing the shoes. But I knew they would. They literally couldn't help themselves." The glass conservatory refracted the reception lights into 1,000 tiny rainbows, each one reflected in grandmother's silver shoe clasps as I stood. The white sneakers my supposed backup plan sat untouched in their box. I'd never intended to wear them. They were props in a performance my family thought they were directing. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying across the silent hall. The microphone was unnecessary. Everyone was listening. "Before we continue celebrating, I need to address what you've just witnessed." Sloane stood frozen by her table, her phone clutched like a lifeline. The live stream had ended, but the damage was done. Her followers had screen-recorded everything: her confession, the security footage, her sneer as she told me to walk barefoot. The internet never forgets, especially cruelty delivered with such smugness. Mom tried once more to leave, but the exits remained politely blocked. Not imprisonment, just consequence. She had to face this moment she'd created through 20 years of enabling. "These shoes," I continued, lifting my foot slightly so the vintage heels caught the light, "belonged to my grandmother, Sarah Morgan. She wore them to her own wedding in 1953. She died when I was 12, but not before teaching me something crucial. Dignity isn't about never being knocked down. It's about how you choose to stand up." I walked toward the center of the room, each step deliberate on the conservatory's glass floor. Below, the garden lights created a mirror world, and I appeared to walk on air. My family assumed I'd hidden backup shoes because I'm weak, because I always comply, because I've spent 34 years absorbing their cruelty and responding with silence. I paused, meeting Mom's eyes. But silence isn't consent. It's observation. It's documentation. It's patience. The presentation screens flickered back to life the second phase Mara had programmed. New images appeared, screenshots of text messages between Mom and Sloane from this morning. 11:43 a.m. Mom. She put them in the armoire. East wall. 11:45 a.m. Sloane. Perfect. You keep Dad busy. 12:01 p.m. Mom. Remember, act surprised. Concerned. 12:03 p.m. Sloane. Already recording. This will go viral. Premeditation, I said simply. Not a prank. Not a joke. A coordinated attack designed to humiliate me at my own wedding. Daniel rose and walked to my side, his presence solid and reassuring. He'd seen these messages this morning when Mara had intercepted them, Sloane's phone automatically backing up to a cloud service she'd logged into on my laptop months ago, forgetting to log out. Legal questionable, admissible in court, no, devastating in the court of public opinion. Absolutely. But here's what they didn't know, I continued. The conservatory installed new security features last month. Not just cameras audio recording in all preparation rooms. Every word of their plan was captured. The audio began playing. Mom's voice, crystal clear. She won't dare make a scene. She never does. Take the shoes right before the ceremony. Maximum impact. Sloane's laugh. This will finally put me over 100,000 followers. Mom again. Just remember to look concerned when she discovers they're gone. We're trying to help, not hurt. The recording ended. The silence that followed felt alive, writhing with discomfort and judgment. Mom's charity board members exchanged glances. Dad's business partners shifted in their seats. The social fabric my parents had spent decades weaving was unraveling thread by thread. "Mrs. Barrett," Mrs. Rodriguez announced from her position by the main entrance. "Ms. Barrett, you're both in violation of the venue's harassment policy. Security will escort you out after you sign the incident reports. Any attempt to return will result in criminal trespass charges." "This is entrapment!" Mom shrieked, her composure finally cracking completely. "You set us up." "No," I corrected. "I gave you rope. You chose to hang yourselves with it." Mara stepped forward, briefcase in hand. "Mrs. Barrett, Ms. Barrett, you've been served." She handed them each a packet of papers. "Cease and desist for harassment and unauthorized use of image and likeness. Demand for repayment of misappropriated education funds, and notice of intent to file civil charges if compliance isn't met within 30 days. You can't prove anything about that money." Mom spat. "Actually," Mara said calmly, "we can. Your husband already admitted knowledge of the transfers on recording tonight." Dad's face drained of color as he realized his conversation with me by the orchids had been recorded too. Not secretly, I'd been holding my phone openly, the recording app visible. He'd been too distracted to notice. "I told you the truth, Dad," I said. "Every word, and you chose to confess. That's on you." Security moved in, professionally but firmly. Mom and Sloan were escorted toward the exits, their protests echoing off the glass walls. But as they reached the door, something unexpected happened. Dad didn't follow. He stood by his table, looking at the shoes on my feet, his mother's shoes. "I remember when she wore them," he said quietly. "She was so proud, said they made her feel like she could handle anything." "They do," I replied. "I'll transfer the money back," he said. "All of it, with interest. Tonight." Mom turned back, furious. "Victor, don't you dare. It's over. Elaine." His voice carried a finality I'd never heard before. "I've been a coward for 20 years, but I won't be a thief for one more minute." He pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, and started the transfer in front of everyone. $47,000 plus 5 years of interest at market rate. The confirmation appeared on my phone within seconds. "That's not enough," he said, "but it's a start." Mom's scream of rage followed her out the door. Sloane's live stream audience had swelled to thousands, but they weren't her followers anymore. They were witnesses to her humiliation, her exposure, her complete destruction of her own brand. The comments scrolled past faster than anyone could read: narcissist, abuser, toxic, canceled. The conservatory doors closed behind them with a decisive click. I stood in my grandmother's shoes, surrounded by chosen family and true friends, the ghost orchids floating above like blessings. The mirror floor showed my reflection not walking on air anymore, but standing on solid ground. "DJ," I said into the microphone, "I believe my husband owes me a first dance." The first dance ended to genuine applause, but I wasn't finished. The real performance was about to begin. "Before we continue celebrating," I announced, returning to the microphone, "I want to share something my grandmother once told me. She said manipulation thrives in darkness, but withers in light. Tonight, we're turning on all the lights." The screens activated again. This time, they showed a split display 3 panels of evidence, methodically organized. Mara had outdone herself with the presentation design: clean, professional, undeniable. Panel 1, financial fraud, wire transfers from the education account, dates, amounts, receiving accounts. The Glowick business registration showing Sloan as sole proprietor, making her legally liable for receiving stolen funds. Panel 2, pattern documentation. 63 incidents over 15 years, each one time-stamped, many with contemporary evidence photos, emails, witness statements I'd been quietly collecting. Panel 3, live feed from Sloane's own social media, where her carefully curated image was disintegrating in real time. "My sister built her business on theft," I said simply. "Not just money, dignity, peace, safety. She monetized cruelty and called it content. The reception hall had transformed into something between a wedding and a tribunal. Guests leaned forward, absorbed in the unfolding revelation. Several had their phones out, recording not for cruelty like Sloane, but for evidence, for witness, for protection. But she didn't work alone. The screens shifted to email threads between Mom and Sloane, planning their campaigns. My mother orchestrated, enabled, and profited from this abuse. She taught my sister that other people exist to be used. A new email appeared, dated 3 weeks ago, from Elaine Barrett to Sloane Barrett. Subject: wedding opportunity. This is perfect. Maximum exposure for Glowwick. Make sure you get the breakdown on camera tiers if possible. Your followers love authentic emotion. I'll handle your father. Authentic emotion, I repeated. My pain as content strategy. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward with a tablet, showing security footage from the parking lot. Ms. Morgan, we've found additional evidence. Your mother and sister were photographed removing multiple items from your preparation room. The footage played, not just the shoes they'd taken, my emergency kit, my phone charger, the backup makeup supplies, everything designed to create chaos, to force me into distress. Theft, conspiracy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Mara listed from her position near the evidence table. In Colorado, conspiracy to commit theft over $5,000 is a Class 5 felony. The shoes alone were valued at $12,000. Daniel's aunt, a retired judge from Denver, stood up. Young lady, are you planning to press criminal charges? That depends, I said. Looking directly at a camera, one of the guests was pointing at me. Someone live streaming to thousands, on whether they choose accountability or escalation. My phone buzzed. A text from Sloane. You've destroyed everything. I shared it on the screen. No, I said aloud, knowing she was watching from the parking lot. I've revealed everything. There's a difference. Another text, from Mom this time. You'll regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. That one went on the screen too. More threats, I observed. More evidence. Then something unexpected happened. Dad walked to the microphone. I need to say something, he said, his voice shaking but determined. For 20 years, I've been a coward. I watched my wife and younger daughter torment Tessa. I made excuses. I looked away. I facilitated abuse through inaction. The hall fell silent. When they started taking money from Tessa's education fund, I told myself it was temporary. When they humiliated her at family gatherings, I told myself it was harmless. When they sabotaged her opportunities, I told myself she was strong enough to handle it. He turned to me. You were strong, but you shouldn't have had to be. A father's job is to protect his children, all of them. I failed you, and I failed Sloane too, by letting her become this person. He pulled out his phone, showing his banking app. I've transferred the stolen money back, but that's not enough. He swiped to another screen. I've also scheduled transfers for the interest you paid on student loans you shouldn't have needed, for the therapy you required because of us, for the opportunities lost. It's not complete restitution. I can't give back the years, but it's what I can do tonight. The amounts appeared on screen, over $100,000 in total. Furthermore, he continued, I'm prepared to testify to everything I witnessed, every theft, every conspiracy, every act of cruelty. My wife and daughter made their choices. Now I'm making mine. Someone in the crowd started recording his statement, then another. Within minutes, his confession was spreading across social media, tagged with Sloane's handle, ensuring her former followers would see it. Mr. Barrett, Mara said formally, I'm obligated to inform you that this statement constitutes admission of criminal conspiracy. You have the right to legal counsel. I have counsel, he said. I called them an hour ago. I'm turning state's evidence in exchange for immunity. Elaine and Sloane don't know it yet, but the district attorney is very interested in cases of elder financial abuse. Taking money designated by grandparents for grandchildren qualifies. My phone exploded with notifications. Screenshots flooded in from viewers of various live streams. Sloane's follower count hadn't just dropped, her account had been suspended for terms of service violations. The videos of her tormenting me had been reported en masse as harassment and abuse. Mom's charity board president approached me. "Ms. Morgan, I want you to know that effective immediately, your mother is removed from all positions within our organization. We cannot be associated with this behavior." Others followed. The country club membership chair, the book club president, the social infrastructure Mom had spent decades building collapsed in minutes, but the crescendo was yet to come. "There's one more thing," I announced. "Grandmother's shoes weren't the only thing they tried to steal today." The screens showed a new document, a life insurance policy Mom had taken out on me 5 years ago, herself as beneficiary. Forged signature on the application. "Insurance fraud," Mara announced. "Federal crime, FBI jurisdiction." The reception hall erupted. Guests talked over each other, phones buzzed with alerts, and somewhere in the parking lot, police sirens approached. I stood in the center of it all, wearing grandmother's shoes, finally understanding their true power. They weren't just footwear. They were foundation, the solid ground I'd needed to stand on while I dismantled 20 years of abuse in 20 minutes of devastating truth. "Now," I said, raising my champagne glass. "Who's ready to celebrate a wedding?" The police arrived at 9:23 p.m., their presence transforming the conservatory into something between a wedding venue and a crime scene. 2 officers entered quietly, directed by Mrs. Rodriguez to a side office where Mom and Sloane were being held by security. "Ms. Morgan," the senior officer approached me. "We've received multiple reports of theft, fraud, and harassment. The venue has provided security footage, and we understand there's additional evidence." Mara stepped forward with her briefcase. "Everything's here. Officer, documented, notarized, with chain of custody maintained. We've also filed reports with the FBI regarding the insurance fraud and with the state attorney general regarding the fiduciary breach." Through the glass walls, I could see Mom being escorted to a police car. She'd stopped screaming, her face set in a mask of cold fury. Sloane followed, still clutching her phone, trying to salvage something from her destroyed online presence. But every post, every story, every desperate attempt to spin the narrative was met with screenshots of her own words. "Try walking barefoot." The timestamp on those screenshots, 2:31 p.m., would haunt her career forever. Inside the reception hall, something remarkable was happening. The wedding hadn't stopped. If anything, it had transformed into something more honest, more real. Guests mingled with purpose now, conversations deep and meaningful. The pretense had been stripped away, leaving only truth. Daniel's mother approached me, tears in her eyes. "Mija," she said, using the endearment she'd never used before. "You are the strongest woman I know. My son chose well." The DJ, a consummate professional, had kept music playing softly throughout the chaos. "Now," he announced, "the bride and groom have requested that we continue with the celebration. But first, Ms. Morgan has asked to share one more thing." I took the microphone again. 20 minutes ago, my father transferred $100,000 in restitution. That money was stolen from my future. Tonight, I'm giving it a different purpose." The screens showed a new document, a contract I'd signed that morning. "Effective tomorrow, the Ravenwood Community Housing Foundation will receive a $100,000 grant to establish the Sarah Morgan Fund, named for my grandmother. It will provide emergency financial assistance to people escaping abusive family situations." The room erupted in genuine applause. My colleagues from Ravenwood were crying. Even some strangers plus ones who'd simply come for free food and drama stood and clapped. Abuse thrives on financial control. I continued. How many people stay in toxic situations because they can't afford to leave? This fund will help change that. My phone buzzed with a notification from the bank. The transfer was complete. The money that had been stolen to fund Sloane's vanity was now repurposed to fund freedom for others. Mrs. Rodriguez returned from dealing with the police. "Ms. Morgan, They'll need your statement, but not until Monday. They have enough from the security footage and documents to hold both individuals for questioning. Both, I asked. Your mother and sister. Your father is cooperating fully. He's already at the station, providing a detailed statement. Through the windows, I saw the police cars pull away. Red and blue lights faded into the distance, taking with them 20 years of manipulation and control. The conservatory felt lighter somehow, as if the glass walls had been holding in more than just warm air. The ghost orchids swayed gently above, and I remembered grandmother telling me they were named that because they seemed to float without roots, surviving on air alone. But that wasn't true. They had roots, just ones so fine they seemed invisible. Like the preparation I'd done for this night, like the strength she'd given me through her shoes. Mara pulled me aside. The cease and desist is officially served. The criminal complaints are filed. The insurance fraud report is with the FBI. The state attorney general has the fiduciary breach documentation. Every legal avenue is now in motion. Timeline. I asked. Criminal charges within the week. The insurance fraud investigation will take longer, but it's federal, they don't mess around. Civil suits can proceed immediately. With your father's cooperation and the evidence we have, Sloan and your mother are looking at significant legal consequences. And the money. Your father's transfer is complete and irreversible. The properties in your mother's name can be liened for additional damages. Sloan's business assets can be seized. You'll recover everything, plus damages. I thought about Sloan's successful business, built on stolen funds and manufactured drama. By tomorrow morning, Glowwick would be worthless. No brand would partner with her. No followers would trust her. She'd destroyed herself with her own weapon of choice, social media. The wedding cake arrived. 3 tiers of white chocolate and raspberry, topped with sugar ghost orchids. Daniel and I cut it together, his hand steady over mine. The photographer captured the moment real joy, not performed happiness. No smashing cake and faces, I announced, getting laughs. I think we've had enough drama for one wedding. As guests ate cake and danced, I noticed something beautiful happening. People were connecting authentically, sharing their own stories of family dysfunction and survival. My public dismantling of abuse had given others permission to acknowledge their own experiences. Daniel's cousin approached me. My stepmother did something similar with my college fund. I never had the courage to confront it. Thank you for showing me it's possible. A +1 I didn't know shared her story of her sister destroying her wedding dress the night before her ceremony. I wore my backup dress and never said anything. I wish I'd had your strength. The conservatory had become a space of collective healing. My wedding transformed into something larger than a union between 2 people. It was a declaration that abuse stops here, that silence is not required, that dignity can be reclaimed even in the most public way. At 10:45 p.m., my phone rang. Dad. The FBI wants to meet with you Monday, he said. The insurance fraud is bigger than just your policy. They found 6 others, all family members, all forged signatures. Your mother and Sloan have been running this for years. The final piece clicked into place. This wasn't just about me. There were other victims, other family members who'd been targeted. My grandmother's shoes hadn't just helped me stand up for myself. They'd helped me expose a pattern that would have continued indefinitely. I'll be there, I told him. Tessa, he said, his voice breaking. I'm sorry for everything. I know, I replied. Your actions tonight prove that, but forgiveness will take time. I understand. I hung up and returned to my wedding, to my husband, to my chosen family. The conservatory's glass ceiling showed stars now, the Denver light pollution faint enough here to see actual constellations. Tomorrow would bring statements and lawyers and the long process of legal justice. But tonight, in my grandmother's shoes, I had already won, not through cruelty or manipulation, but through truth methodically revealed, consequences precisely delivered, and boundaries finally, irrevocably enforced. The ghost orchids floated above, rootless but thriving, like the new life I was about to begin. 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes before midnight, before my wedding day became memory. Daniel and I stood on the conservatory's observation deck, the reception winding down below us. Through the glass floor, we could see the last dancers swaying to slow songs, the ghost orchids now lit from below, creating shadows that danced on the ceiling. "Ready for the final act?" I asked him. He squeezed my hand. "Your show, your rules." We descended to the main floor where about 30 guests remained the core group, the ones who mattered. Mara had one last document ready, one last moment of reckoning planned. "Before we end this evening," I announced, "there's something else you should know." The screens lit up one final time, showing a single video security footage from the parking lot, time-stamped 11:43 p.m., just 15 minutes ago. Mom and Sloan, released on their own recognizance, standing by Mom's blue Lexus. Their conversation, picked up by the parking lot's security audio, played crystal clear. "We'll destroy her," Mom hissed. "I'll call every vendor, every contact. She'll be blacklisted from everything." "I'm already drafting the defamation suit," Sloan added. "We'll claim she doctored the evidence. My followers will believe me over her." "No," Mom said. "We go darker. Remember the Henderson's daughter. We'll use the same playbook." The recording stopped. The Henderson's daughter had attempted suicide after a sustained harassment campaign. Everyone in our social circle knew the story, though no one could ever prove who was behind it. Until now. "That's conspiracy to commit harassment," Mara announced. "Recorded after they'd been warned, after they'd been arrested, after they knew they were under investigation. It demonstrates pattern behavior and intent to continue criminal activity." I pulled out my phone and sent the recording to the detective handling the case. "They've just violated the conditions of their release. They'll be back in custody within the hour." Sure enough, through the conservatory's windows, we watched police cars return to the parking lot. This time, Mom and Sloan were handcuffed. This time, there would be no release until trial. The conservatory fell silent except for the soft music and the distant sound of sirens fading into the night. I looked down at Grandmother's shoes, their silver clasps reflecting the stars visible through the glass ceiling. They'd carried me through this entire performance, never wavering, never failing. "These shoes," I said to the remaining guests, "have walked through 3 generations. My grandmother wore them in 1953, believing in love and new beginnings. Tonight, they've walked through truth and consequences. Tomorrow, they'll walk into a future free from manipulation, gaslighting, and abuse." I sat down and carefully removed them, holding them up to the light. "But they're not magical. The power was never in the shoes. It was in the choice to stand firm, to document everything, to refuse silence, to demand justice." Daniel knelt beside me with the white sneakers, the backup shoes everyone thought were my surrender plan. But when I opened the box, it wasn't empty space for shoes inside. It was filled with copies of every piece of evidence, every document, every recording USB drives for digital files, printed copies of crucial emails, transcripts of recorded conversations, my real insurance policy. Even if they'd destroyed the originals, I explained. Even if they'd somehow sabotaged tonight's revelation, the truth would have survived. When you're dealing with people who've gaslit you for decades, you learn to create redundancies for your redundancies. Mrs. Rodriguez approached with the final venue document. "Ms. Morgan, the conservatory would like to offer you something." She handed me an envelope. "Free venue rental for your 5th anniversary party. We want to see what you do when you're celebrating love without having to expose lies." The clock struck midnight. My wedding day was officially over. But as I stood in the conservatory, surrounded by chosen family and true friends, with my grandmother's shoes in my hands and my husband beside me, I realized the real victory wasn't in the exposure or the arrests or even the justice that would follow. It was in this moment of absolute freedom. For the first time in my life, I had no secrets to keep, no abuse to hide, no manipulations to navigate. I could simply be. The remaining guests began to leave, each offering words of support, promises to testify if needed, acknowledgments of courage they'd witnessed. Daniel's family embraced me with a warmth my own family had never shown. My colleagues from Ravenwood promised to ensure the Sarah Morgan Fund would help as many people as possible escape situations like mine. As the conservatory emptied, I noticed one person remained a woman I didn't recognize, elderly, sitting alone at a back table. "I knew your grandmother," she said when I approached. "Sarah and I were friends for 40 years. She would have been so proud tonight, not of the revenge, she wasn't vindictive, but of the courage, of the refusal to let them diminish you, of the way you turned pain into purpose with that fund." She stood, surprisingly steady despite her age. "She gave me something to give to you if you ever got married. She knew your mother, knew what she was." Sarah said, "If my granddaughter manages to marry despite Elaine's interference, give her this." She handed me a small box. Inside was a simple gold necklace with a single charm, a tiny key. She said to tell you keys open doors, but they also lock them. Know when to do both. I put on the necklace, the key resting against my heart. Grandmother had known. She'd seen it all and left me not just shoes to stand in, but wisdom to know when to lock toxicity out for good. Daniel and I left the conservatory at 12:37 a.m., walking through the garden paths lit by moon and memory. Behind us, the glass structure stood like a jewel in the darkness, the place where truth had finally defeated lies. In the parking lot, the space where Mom's Lexus had been was empty except for some scattered papers, the cease and desist orders they'd thrown on the ground in rage. Now, evidence of their continued defiance of legal warnings. We drove away in silence, the city lights of Denver spreading before us like a carpet of possibilities. My phone buzzed with notifications, messages of support, news outlets picking up the story, Sloane's former followers sharing their own experiences of her bullying, but I turned it off. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and statements and the slow grind of justice, but tonight was for peace. For the first time in 34 years, I had nothing to hide from, nothing to prepare for, no one to protect myself against. I was free. As we pulled into our driveway, our home, not theirs, never theirs, I took off grandmother's shoes one last time, cradling them carefully. They'd done their job. They'd helped me stand firm against decades of abuse and walk steadily through the destruction of toxic patterns. But now I could walk barefoot if I wanted, not because someone forced me to, not as a humiliation, but as a choice. My choice. The shoes would go in a place of honor, ready for the next generation if needed. But hopefully, because of tonight, they'd never need to be armor again. They could simply be shoes beautiful, vintage, carrying love instead of the weight of necessary revenge. I looked at them one last time, then at Daniel, then at our front door, the entrance to a life finally, truly, completely my own. "Let's go home," I said. And we did, leaving the ghost orchids and shattered facades behind, walking into a future where love didn't require defense strategies and family meant the people you chose, not the ones who chose to hurt you. The conservatory's lights behind us slowly dimmed, but ahead, our porch light blazed a beacon guiding us toward the life we'd fought to claim, one truthful step at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. Your stories and perspectives make this community special. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living truthfully.